The fog clung to the Himalayan ridge like a lover reluctant to let go, its tendrils curling around Daniel's boots as he stood alone on the cliff at dawn. The air was sharp, scented with pine and the faint musk of wet earth, the kind of morning that made a man feel like he'd stepped into a painting not yet finished. Daniel, a 34-year-old wildlife photographer, had chased this light before, countless times in fact. His camera a faithful companion slung over his shoulder, his steps deliberate on the narrow path of fallen needles and slick stone. The valley below glowed, a sea of mist pierced by the sun's first golden rays, and for a moment, the world was his alone. Silent, vast, perfect. He set up his tripod on a ledge no wider than a man's stride, the drop behind him plunging into a gorge that swallowed sound itself. The forest pressed close at his back, dense and watchful, while before him stretched nothing but sky and the promise of a shot that could define a career. He adjusted his lens, breath steady, heart calm. This was why he lived, to capture the wild in its unguarded moments. Then, a sound fractured the stillness, a low, guttural tremor, not of power but of pain. It didn't belong here, not in this sacred quiet. Daniel froze, his pulse quickening. The sound came again, closer, ragged, pulling his eyes from the horizon to the shadowed tree-line. He scanned the ridge, expecting a boar, perhaps a leopard. But what he saw stopped his breath. There, meters away, clinging to a broken slope, was a tigress, massive, her orange and black coat streaked with blood, her body wedged between gnarled roots and jagged stone. One paw was trapped beneath a flat rock, her muscles quivering with each labored breath. Her ribs heaved too fast, her strength ebbing. Yet it wasn't her size or her wounds that held Daniel captive. It was her eyes, golden, unblinking. They locked onto his, not with the fire of a predator, but with something softer, something that pleaded. She wasn't growling. She wasn't baring teeth. She was asking. In that instant, every rule Daniel knew, every warning about distance, about the untamed laws of the wild, dissolved. This was no documentary monster, no symbol of raw power. This was a mother, desperate, her life hanging by a thread. Somewhere in the mist, he heard a faint, high-pitched mewl, like cubs calling. His heart thudded. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for them. Every instinct screamed for him to retreat, to let nature run its course. A tiger, even wounded, could kill with a single swipe. But those eyes held him. He stepped forward, closer to the cliff's edge, closer to her. The ground felt unsteady, as if the earth itself questioned his choice. He didn't know then that this moment, this reckless heartbeat, would unravel a story no one would believe. Daniel's boots sank into the damp earth, each step a rebellion against reason. The tigress watched him, her massive chest rising and falling, her injured paw grotesquely pinned. Blood pooled beneath her, dark against the stone. He heard the cubs again, their whimpers faint but urgent, hidden in the underbrush behind her. That explained her stillness, her refusal to lash out. She was a mother, tethered to her young by something stronger than pain. He scanned the slope. No help, no signal, no tools in his pack beyond lenses and a useless satellite phone. The voice in his head was loud. Leave, go back, survive. But her eyes blinked slowly, deliberately, as if she sensed his hesitation and chose to trust him instead of fear him. It wasn't language, not in any human sense, but it was something ancient, something shared. He grabbed a thick branch from a fallen tree, its bark rough against his palms. He wedged it under the rock, trapping her paw, his arms trembling not from effort but from the weight of her gaze. The tigress flinched, her body tensing, but she didn't strike. Daniel pushed, the branch creaking, the rock resisting. His breath stopped. The stone shifted just an inch. The tigress let out a sound, half growl, half cry, as blood trickled down her leg. He adjusted, pushed harder. The wood groaned, then cracked, the rock rolled free. She yanked her paw out with a snarl, limping back, her eyes never leaving his. Daniel stumbled backward, hands raised, heart a drum in his chest. This was it, the moment she could leap, could kill. But she didn't. She held his gaze for one endless second, her golden eyes burning with something beyond gratitude, beyond instinct. Then, with a limp, she vanished into the forest, swallowed by the mist. He stood alone, hands shaking, the cliff silent again. He'd saved a tiger, with his bare hands. He thought that was the end. He was wrong. The adrenaline lingered, morphing into a strange pull, as if the forest had claimed a piece of him. Daniel packed his gear slowly, his mind replaying her eyes, the rock, the cub's faint cries. He should have left, returned to camp, reported the encounter. But something deeper stirred, a call he couldn't name. Instead of retreating, he followed her trail. Broken branches, faint paw prints, a drop of blood on a leaf. She was clever, moving low, leaving little trace. The mist thickened, curling around him like a living thing, but he pressed on, drawn deeper into the trees. Then he heard it again, two soft mules, barely a whisper. He crouched, edging through a wall of ferns. There, beneath a hollow log cloaked in moss, were two tiger cubs, small, striped, their fur still fluffy, their eyes wide with fear. One licked the other's paw, where a small cut bled faintly. Daniel's chest tightened. He was too close. If she returned now, a rustle behind him. He froze. The tigress. She limped through the ferns, her eyes burning through the mist. Daniel raised his arms, legs locked, expecting her to charge. But she didn't. She moved past him, so close he could smell the earth in her fur, hear the weight of her breath. She lay beside her cubs with a heavy groan, the injured one nuzzling her side. She licked its face, gentle despite her pain. Daniel didn't move. He didn't breathe. She wasn't just sparing him. She was letting him see. See her, see them, in a moment no human should witness. Time dissolved. The forest, once alive with danger, felt like a temple, sacred and still. He backed away, step by careful step, never turning his back. When he reached camp hours later, he said nothing. How could he? They'd call it madness, a hallucination born of fog and adrenaline. But something had shifted inside him, a crack in the wall between man and wild. He returned to the ridge each morning, not with a camera, not for proof, but for her. Some days he saw nothing. Others he found paw prints, once a cub at a distance, growing stronger. Then one dawn, she appeared, healed, standing tall on the ridge above. Their eyes met across the mist. It wasn't love, not recognition, but memory. A bond forged in a single choice. But the wild doesn't rest. A week later, gunshots shattered the dawn. Poachers, illegal, relentless, they haunted the reserve like ghosts. A ranger burst into camp, panic in his eyes. A tiger family, mother, 2 cubs, 1 injured, had been spotted in the northern range. Tracks blood, empty snares. Daniel didn't think. He grabbed his kit and ran. The tigress's eyes burned into his mind. She was in danger again. This time it wasn't nature, it was man. And this time the ending might not be trust. It might be sacrifice. Daniel tore through the jungle, the ranger's footsteps pounding behind him, each snap of a twig underfoot like a pulse in the thickening air. The forest had changed, its serenity replaced by a taut, electric silence, as if the trees themselves held their breath. The sun slanted low, casting golden veins through the canopy. but the beauty felt like a lie. Somewhere ahead, the tigress and her cubs were running, bleeding, hunted. Gunshots had echoed minutes ago, sharp and unnatural, a violation of the wild's unspoken code. Daniel's chest burned, not from the sprint but from a fire kindled on that cliff a week before, when he'd looked into her eyes and chosen to step forward. The ranger, a wiry man named Arjun, pointed to broken branches and smears of blood on bark. "They didn't get far," he muttered, his voice low, urgent. 3 poachers, armed. The trail was fresh. Muddy paw prints, small and large, mingled with drag marks where the injured cub had faltered. Daniel's gut twisted. He saw it in his mind. The smaller cub, its paw caught in a snare, the tigress circling, refusing to leave. That's what mothers do. They stay even when the world turns predator. They found the first snare, a cruel wire loop half buried under leaves, its metal glinting like a traitor's smile. No blood here, but the second snare, 100 yards deeper, told a darker story. A splash of red stained the dirt, small paw prints smudged in frantic circles. Arjun knelt, his fingers tracing the marks. "The cub broke free," he said. "Alive. For now." Daniel's throat tightened. For now. The tigress's tracks wove tightly around the snare, protective, unyielding. She was close, wounded but fierce, her cubs her anchor. The jungle grew denser, roots twisting like veins across the earth, vines dangling like nooses. Birds had fallen silent, their absence louder than any cry. Then, a growl low, drawn out, not far ahead. It wasn't a warning. It was pain, threaded with defiance. A second growl followed, sharper, angrier. Then voices, human, shouting, panicked. A gunshot cracked, splitting the air. Daniel's legs moved before his mind could stop them. Arjun hissed for him to wait, but he couldn't. Branches clawed at his arms, vines snagged his boots, but he pushed forward, hard a war drum, until he burst into a clearing and stopped cold. The scene didn't make sense. One poacher lay on the ground, clutching a bloodied arm, his screams jagged against the silence. Another was scrambling to his feet, rifle dropped, eyes wild with fear. In the center stood the tigress, blood matting her shoulder, her body low, shielding something behind her. The injured cub, its small form trembling but alive. Her eyes found Daniel's, that same fierce calm from the cliff, but now laced with desperation. She was outnumbered, outgunned, her strength fading. The third poacher stood apart, rifle raised, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Get back!" the second poacher shouted, voice cracking. But Daniel stepped forward, arms raised, his own voice steady despite the fear clawing his chest. "Leave them. You don't know what you're doing." The third poacher turned, his gun now aimed at Daniel, its barrel gleaming in the fading light. Time froze. The tigress's growl, the injured poacher's gasps, the jungle's held breath. Daniel saw the man's finger tense, saw his own death in the black of the barrel. Then a roar. Not hers, but something else, something primal. From above, a flash of tan muscle exploded through the underbrush. A leopard, silent as death, launched from a low branch. 1 second the poacher was aiming. The next, he was down, screaming, the leopard's claws raking his back before it vanished into the canopy as swiftly as it came. The forest erupted. The tigress lunged, dragging her cub into the underbrush. The second poacher fled, his wounded companion staggering after him, blood painting the roots. Daniel stood rooted, heart hammering, the air thick with violence and the scent of earth and blood. Arjun arrived, breathless, rifle drawn. He surveyed the chaos. 2 poachers gone, one writhing on the ground, The tigress and her cub vanished. "They're gone," Daniel rasped, his voice barely his own. Arjun knelt beside the wounded poacher, binding his hands with a cord. "You're lucky," he muttered, "all of you." But Daniel wasn't thinking of luck. He was thinking of the tigress's eyes, the leopard's impossible timing. The jungle had chosen, not him, not the poachers. It had chosen her, her cubs, the wild itself. He stumbled back, legs unsteady, mind reeling. What he'd witnessed wasn't just survival. It was something older, deeper, a pact written in blood and instinct. The tigress hadn't attacked him. The leopard hadn't touched him. The wild had judged, and the hunters had been found wanting. Weeks passed. The poachers were caught, the wounded one betraying his partners under the weight of his own pain. Patrols doubled, snares were cleared, and new fences rose along the reserve's edges. But Daniel didn't care about the reports or the victories. He returned to the ridge every dawn, sitting on the same rock where it began. No camera, no notebook, just him and the mist waiting. He didn't know why, only that he had to. The forest had changed him, carved something new into his bones. One morning, when the mist hung thin and the first light warmed the ferns, he heard a rustle. He froze, breath caught. She emerged, the tigress, her coat gleaming, her shoulder healed, her stride sure. Beside her, two cubs, larger now, their steps bold, their eyes bright with life. She paused, her gaze meeting his across the ridge. No fear, no threat, just a slow blink, a silent acknowledgement. Then she turned, her cubs tumbling after her, and melted into the forest. He never saw her again. He didn't need to. Some stories don't end in photographs or proof. They end in silence, in memory, in a bond no words could hold. The jungle had spoken, not in roars or blood, but in trust. A man who saved a mother who spared a man, a wild that remembered. In a world where human and beast rarely meet, their story became a whisper in the leaves, a legend too vast for belief, too quiet for the world to hear. But Daniel carried it, etched in his heart, a truth that needed no telling, only living.